Hi, I'm with Aston. Today I'm with Charlotte Rimmer to learn all about dormice.
Hi, my name's Charlotte Rimmer. I'm from the Hampshire Dormouse Group, and we are here today in this lovely piece of ancient semi-natural woodland just to the north of Andover, hopefully going to find some dormice. Now, this woodland is really special. Being an ancient semi-natural woodland, it means it's had woodland cover since at least the 1600s, and now the way that is determined is by certain indicator plant species that you might find here, including bluebells, wood anemone, and dog's mercury as well, which are really abundant throughout this woodland. And that makes it a fantastic habitat for Hazel Dormouse, which you will find living throughout the canopy in this woodland. Now, Hazel Dormouse are a declining species in the UK, and that's largely to do with the decline in woodland management, the destruction and fragmentation of their habitat through the removal of hedgerows, but also a more recent challenge that they face is through climate change as well. So that's the changing seasons of when they might be able to find their food or their ability to hibernate because of temperatures that are changing throughout our winter. This woodland here is set up as a National Dormouse Monitoring Programme site, and that means it has a number of dormouse boxes throughout the woodland, like the one behind me, that you can see, and that is how we help to find the dormice and learn a little bit about them and how they're using the woodland. And once a month, between April and November, we go and check the boxes to see if we can find any dormice that are living there. Sometimes we're lucky, sometimes we're not. They are sort of characteristically elusive and difficult to find. But during the breeding season, we might get lucky and we might find nests of breeding youngsters as well. So we hopefully be able to take that information and feed it back into the national programme to learn a little bit about dormouse trends throughout the year and across years as well, to see how dormouse conservation is progressing and whether we can hopefully slow that decline in dormouse populations. So when dormice emerge from hibernation in around April, they've obviously been asleep for a really long time, and the first thing they want to do is find some food. And at the beginning of the year, you're not going to be finding those things like the fruits and nuts and berries that they characteristically eat, or the things that people think they eat all the time. They're going to be looking for flowers and insects and nectar to help them get that additional energy that they've lost over winter. As they progress through the season, then they'll be finding those different food sources up in the tree canopy and progressing into the autumn, eating those lovely blackberries and hazelnuts and other things they find to get themselves nice and fat again, ready for hibernation, so they can go to sleep and maintain that stable body condition throughout the winter. So some of the flowers they might particularly be eating early in the season are hawthorn flowers. They might be eating the bramble flowers as well, which is why hedgerows are so fantastic. You can see all those different fruiting varieties and flowering varieties all in one place throughout the season. They generally don't travel very far, and they might travel up to about 50 metres at the most to collect their nesting material. Largely they're using things like green leaves, which they'll collect from the trees around them, and honeysuckle, which is characteristic within this woodland. You can see it growing up the hazel stalls. They'll strip the bark off that and bring it back to make that nice characteristic woven nest that you see in all the dormouse books. But quite often they don't follow that, so you might have a combination of all sorts of different things. Just green leaves, you might have a woven centre with green leaves around the outside, or you might have things like the bluebell stems. We've seen evidence of them using bracken as well, whatever's nice and close in their local vicinity. But you name it, probably they'll use it. Other mice, so yellownecks and wood mice that you might find in the dormouse boxes, is that because they are so dexterous, they can collect those green leaves from out in the tree canopy and bring them back to the nest boxes. Whereas if you have a nest stuffed to the top full of brown leaves, it's likely to be a wood mouse or a yellowneck mouse, because they are not able to collect those green leaves from the canopy. They'll be collecting leaves off the forest floor and bringing them back into the boxes. So dormouse breeding season can start any time from May to June, depending on the weather conditions. And now a female dormouse will have potentially anywhere between 1 and 5 young, and they have a much slower life cycle compared to other small mammals. Whereas wood mice and yellowneck mice will have lots of babies really quickly, send them out into the big wide world, and generally the youngsters that you're seeing early in the season will have overwintered and be the young from the year before. Dormice live much slower. They take a lot longer to raise their young, even to the point where they're taking them out into the tree canopy, showing them where to find food. And they'll be looking after them and showing them these places before they're ready to leave. So it's likely that they might have 1 or 2 litters a year. And then because they hibernate over the winter as well, they're not running that fast life cycle. So the adults will live into the following year to continue to breed and produce young for the next few years. One really important way for us to help conserve dormice is by helping to encourage others to continue to manage woodlands. And now particularly this woodland here was an old coppiced woodland. Now coppicing is a really old technique that involved collecting the timber from hazel stalls, and now that was used as products to make hazel hurdles and thatching spars and all sorts of different products. But also by that process of cutting the tree and allowing it to regrow on a cycle, we were continuing to allow that woodland canopy cover and that connection, but also lots of heavily fruiting trees as well. And that was really beneficial to hazel dormice. However, coppicing isn't quite so popular anymore, and quite often its place is within woodland conservation. So it's encouraging woodland owners to continue those practices to keep woodlands healthy and regenerating and keep that canopy cover, particularly in the presence of deer, which might be eating any regenerating tree species within the woodland, and keeping that real age structure there. Another way that we can help is by improving our hedgerow connections and managing our hedgerows more appropriately. So that might be allowing our hedgerows to grow slightly taller and slightly thicker, allowing those species to reach a fruiting age, so not keep trimming them back before they have a chance to fruit, and filling in those gaps. So where you get those gaps in the hedgerow where species might have died, planting lots of varieties of tree species within our hedgerows, we can make sure that those gaps are filled in and that dormice can move throughout our landscape rather than becoming isolated in woodlands where they can't then travel and repopulate throughout the landscape. Another risk to dormouse populations, obviously through predation. And now whilst they're arboreal, they're quite difficult to catch. Some predators might include cats, so people's cats. So where properties come into close contact with hedgerows and woodlands that have dormice in, quite often those dormice can become predated by cats. Other things that might predate them, particularly whilst they're in the boxes, are other small mammals. So whilst dormice are torpid, which is sort of a halfway stage between hibernation and being awake. So if the temperatures aren't good or there's not an awful lot of food around, a dormouse would go into what's called torpor. So they'll go to prolonged sleep within the boxes, and that's where they do that nice scrunchy, curled up, characteristic little dormouse ball that quite often you see in all the photos. But whilst they're in torpor, that can take a really long time for them to wake up. And that's when they become quite vulnerable to predation by other small mammals like yellownecks and wood mice, because they can't escape from those boxes. Other things, potentially during hibernation, they could be predated on by badgers and pheasants, things that are rummaging through the leaf litter during the winter in search for food. During hibernation, they lower their body temperature to such a low temperature, they're not giving off a lot of scent, so they're quite difficult for those animals to find. It really is very opportunistic that they're searching through that leaf litter and then happen to stumble across a dormouse.
If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my YouTube channel.